In a hotel in Italy, a group of American spies called the Union was infiltrating the place, currently on a mission to seize America's secret data, which had been stolen by a Russian spy. The confidential data would certainly destroy the country if it fell into the wrong hands. The team was led by a man named Nick and his fellow agent, who was also his wife, Roxanne. Nick and the troops had managed to reclaim the data and take the spy with force for interrogation. But when they were about to leave, they were attacked by someone. Nick managed to take the Russian spy and the data suitcase to the side of the road to wait for extraction, but suddenly, Nick and the man was shot by a mysterious armed man. A car soon came and took the suitcase. From a distance, Roxanne could only see her husband who had died. The mission was a total failure. 2 days later in America, a man named Mike had just woken up from his sleep. After showering and having breakfast, he immediately went to his place of work at a construction site, where he worked as a construction worker. Mike and his friends hung out at the bar after work. They talked about one of their friends who would soon get married. Not long after, his friends left while Mike stayed. Suddenly, he was visited by Roxanne. It was revealed that Roxanne was Mike's high school friend. In fact, they used to date. Mike asked what brought her there, and Roxanne said that she had nothing to do so and just wanted to meet. They continued chatting while playing billiards, discussing the past when they were still dating. After that, Roxanne took Mike to a quiet place because she wanted to be alone with Mike. Hearing that chance to be alone with Roxanne, Mike agreed and they immediately left. When they arrived at the place, they hugged, but suddenly, Mike was injected with something and immediately fainted. When he woke up, he found himself in a luxurious hotel room. He immediately opened the window and became confused because the atmosphere was very different from America. Shortly after, Roxanne came while apologizing because she drugged him last night. She also told him that they were in England. Hearing all that, Mike was shocked and said that he had to go home for work. He ran out of the hotel while Roxanne just laughed while following him. Outside, a man named Tom, who turned out to be the leader of the Union team, was waiting for Mike. Mike was confused about who Tom was and why he recognized him. Tom answered that he would explain later while having breakfast, then asked Mike to get into the car, and Roxanne also came with them. On the way, Mike kept insisting that Tom and Roxanne explain what the meaning of all this was. Finally, Roxanne explained that they were a team of secret American agents called the Union. Tom added that 2 days ago, they had failed a mission in Italy to reclaim a suitcase containing the government's confidential data. Mike asked what did all of that have to do with him. Tom said that he would explain later. After that, the three of them stopped at a bakery to buy breakfast, and after that, went to the headquarters that was not far from there. When they arrived at the headquarters, Tom explained that if the suitcase fell into the hands of the wrong person, the country would be destroyed. They received information that the suitcase would be auctioned next week by a woman named Juliet, and their goal in bringing Mike was to pretend to take part in the auction. Mike asked why it had to be him because he didn't know how to defend himself. Tom answered it was precisely because Mike was a nobody, so he wouldn't be suspected. They would pay him $1 million if he agreed, and hearing $1 million, without thinking twice, Mike agreed. Mike went out to contact his mother and asked her for permission because, for the next few days, he couldn't go home. He also said that he had been given a good job by Roxanne, his ex-girlfriend in high school. His mother allowed it as long as he was careful. The next day, Mike was trained by Roxanne's friend. Not only that, Mike was also trained in shooting and driving by Roxanne.
We have 2 weeks, so we're gonna have
Both cars with the wheel on this side.
Mike, go again.
Huh?
7. Ow, Jesus.
The whole team was gathered before the mission. Tom's confidence said that the auction would start in 3 days and lots of big criminals from various countries had joined the auction list. The auction would run virtually using a special phone that had been prepared. As a condition for participating in the auction, they had to buy the phone for $5 million and it would go on sale the next morning, so Mike had to buy it immediately before it ran out. Roxanne convinced Mike that she would protect him from a distance with a sniper. The next day, Mike walked alone to buy the phone while carrying a bag of $5 million, while Roxanne monitored him on the top of the building. Mike was then approached by a man who immediately asked Mike to come with him for the phone. Roxanne and Tom, who were watching Mike from a distance, panicked, and because they were afraid that Mike would run away or be tricked, Roxanne quickly acted by following Mike. Mike himself was directed to a cafe and then sat at a table. He then found a phone under the table which was ringing. When he picked it up, the caller asked him to go to the men's toilet to find further clues. When he got there, a big man came and the caller asked Mike to hand over all his money to the big man. After the bag of money was taken away, Mike asked the caller where the phone was, and the caller answered that the phone was already in Mike's hand. It turned out that the phone that Mike found under the table was the one to take part in the auction. After that, Mike casually walked out because he thought everything went smoothly, but when he opened the cafe door, a group of armed men attacked him. Luckily, Roxanne came and covered him.
Holy shit, who are these guys?
Just to learn to be a parrot. Just to learn to be a parrot. Or a serious expression. In the middle, I won't grow up. I won't grow up. I don't.
Mike, where are you?
I'm running this place like a damn labyrinth!
Gunfire broke out. The people who attacked Mike were those who wanted the phone because they had run out of stock. Amid the gunfire, Roxanne asked his colleagues for help, but her colleagues were stuck in traffic so they couldn't help. In the end, Roxanne asked Mike to leave first with the phone, while she bought time. Mike was then cornered by two people on a motorbike, but suddenly, a truck hit the bikers. It turned out to be the agents who were stuck in traffic before. Mike felt relieved because he thought everything was over, but then a woman attacked him. Fortunately, Roxanne arrived on time and immediately fought the woman. After successfully killing the woman, they were picked up by Tom's confidant to return to headquarters. On the way, Mike took out the phone which had been damaged because it was submerged in water. He gave it to Tom's confidant while apologizing because he had broken it. When arrived at the headquarters, they were lucky because the phone was fixable. Tom's confidant thought that there was a spy inside because their actions were always caught. Tom denied these accusations because he trusted everyone there. He then explained that there were 5 groups of big criminals who had not received the phone, so it was only natural that they were attacked because they wanted the phone. Luckily, they managed to escape, and the next step was to take part in the auction, which would start in 48 hours. Tom asked all his members to rest because it was late at night. Not long after that, Roxanne invited Mike to stay in her place. When they got there, Mike immediately showered and then slept next to Roxanne. Mike tried his chance to sleep with Roxanne, but he was ignored. In the morning, Roxanne asked Mike to go to the headquarters because Tom had just announced that the auction would start at 6 in the afternoon. They both quickly went to the headquarters. When they got there, Tom explained that they had found the whereabouts of Juliet, the auction operator. Tom changed his initial plan by assigning Mike and Roxanne to go to Juliet's location to arrest her and seize the suitcase by force, while he and the team here would follow the auction and stalled time for them. Mike asked how much the price for the suitcase would end up. Suddenly, his question was answered by the CIA chairman who came with his subordinates. The man asked Mike not to worry because the government would pay no matter how much. The most important thing was for them to seize the suitcase back pay. One thing, if they failed then, the team would be disbanded. Hearing this, Mike and Roxanne immediately got ready and left for Juliet's location using a motorbike. In short, the auction started and the price has reached $100 million. Tom fought against the highest bidder to buy time before Roxanne and Mike managed to catch Juliet. Meanwhile, Roxanne and Mike, who was riding a motorbike, increased their speed so they could quickly arrive at the location. Shortly after, the price had reached $525 million, and the team was still trying to stall as much time as possible. At the same time, Roxanne and Mike had arrived at Juliet's location. They quickly went upstairs to raid Juliet, the auction operator. The auction price had reached $600 million, but luckily Roxanne immediately held Juliet at gunpoint while saying that she would bring the suitcase. Juliet immediately postponed the auction and asked why Roxanne and Mike were there. It was revealed that Juliet was also Mike and Roxanne's high school friend, so they already knew each other. Roxanne asked Juliet to hand over the suitcase, and Juliet put no resistance and said that the suitcase was at home, so she had to get it first. Later, Roxanne and Mike arrived at Juliet's house. When they entered, Juliet immediately took the suitcase she stored inside the fridge. Roxanne asked who Juliet worked for and why the suitcase was with her. Juliet answered that she didn't know because she and her boss only communicated by telephone. Roxanne quickly transferred all the data in the suitcase to the flash drive, but suddenly there was a knock on the door. Roxanne and Mike immediately took out a gun while checking at the person who came. When the door opened, it turned out to be Nick, Roxanne's husband, who was previously reported to have died during the mission in Italy. Of course, Roxanne was very surprised because her husband, who she thought was dead, was actually still alive. Roxanne asked why Nick was still alive and what happened. Nick said that back on their mission in Italy, someone saved him after he was shot and treated for his wound. He then asked Roxanne to be careful because there was a traitor inside the team and it was Tom. But Roxanne didn't believe it and she asked Nick to come with her. Strangely, Nick refused because he didn't want to deal with the Union anymore. He promised to meet her at dawn. He also suggested that they not arrest Juliet because she didn't know anything and was just being ordered by someone. In the end, Roxanne and Mike chose to leave there while carrying the suitcase. On their way to headquarters, Mike asked why Roxanne hadn't once said that she already had a husband. Roxanne answered that she thought that Nick was dead, so she never discussed it. In the morning, Roxanne and Mike were waiting for Nick. Not long after that, Nick called and apologized because he couldn't come. Roxanne became suspicious and asked if this was all a trap. While laughing, Nick apologized because he had scapegoated the Union for stealing the suitcase. The CIA would soon come to arrest them, while the real suitcase had been swapped at Juliet's house last night. The truth was revealed that the mastermind behind the auction was Nick, who had faked his death. Nick himself was flying to Iceland for the transaction. Shortly after, the CIA surrounded Roxanne and Mike. The chairman asked them to give up because they had also arrested Tom. Roxanne tried to explain that Nick had accused her of stealing the suitcase, but the chairman didn't believe it. Luckily, Roxanne and Mike were able to jump into the water and managed to escape the CIA's pursuit. That very day, Roxanne and Mike flew to Iceland because it turned out that she had put a tracking device on Nick's shirt back when they met at Juliet's house. In short, Roxanne and Mike had arrived in Iceland and they went straight to Nick's location according to the directions from the GPS. Meanwhile, Nick was relaxing while waiting for the buyer of his suitcase. He was accompanied by Juliet, who turned out to be his girlfriend. Not long after, the buyer arrived and asked Nick to take the suitcase first. Roxanne came and immediately shot Nick's men, causing the suitcase to be thrown. Mike immediately took the suitcase and was chased by the buyer and his men while Roxanne was still holding Nick, Juliet, and their bodyguards at gunpoint. Fortunately, Juliet asked all her bodyguards to leave because they didn't want to have anything to do with Roxanne, so Roxanne was left alone with Nick. Nick could easily run away from her with his power. On the other hand, Mike was still chased by the buyer and his men. He climbed to the top of a house and a fistfight ensued. He was cornered, but then Roxanne arrived to save him. Nick shortly came and took Roxanne at gunpoint. He asked Mike to hand over the suitcase. However, at the same time, the buyer came with his car. As a result, Mike had to be chased again by the buyer and his men while Nick was chased by Roxanne. Mike was hit by the buyer's car and the suitcase fell while he was thrown into a car trunk. When the buyer was about to take it, Nick came and immediately took the suitcase away. He was chased by Roxanne and then followed by the buyer, who was chasing using a car with Mike inside the trunk. Amid the chase, Mike was able to get out of the trunk and get the buyer out of the car. He then chased Nick. At one point, Mike's car had to free fall into a ravine after being hit by Nick, but luckily he was able to survive and then continued the chase together with Roxanne. Nick had arrived at the pier and was waiting for a boat to pick him up to run away with the suitcase. Not long after, Roxanne and Mike showed up and immediately crashed their car into Nick's car.
Okay, when I say jump, jump, okay?
Okay.
Hands on your head and hit the ground.
They pointed guns at each other. Roxanne asked Nick to give her the suitcase, but Nick offered Roxanne the proceeds from the sale of the suitcase in half if she let him sell the suitcase. Nick also promised to live with Roxanne again, but Roxanne had had enough and immediately killed him. In the end, Roxanne and Mike managed to snatch the suitcase and clear the Union's name. A week later, Mike was attending his friend's wedding party with Roxanne. Mike, who had always liked Roxanne, dared to confess his love and Roxanne accepted him. Not long after that, Tom came and intended to give the two of them another mission.